Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatrayavo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So where are we in our text?
Chapter 10, verse 9-10.
Chapter 10, verse 9-10.
That's the story of Basura.
Is that right?
Page 98.
Okay. Should I start?
Please.
Tasmin tatti vrasangvegat bhavayat bhasuram vapuhu sthulatam eti pakena mano vikalpa phalam yatha. Mano bilva phalam yatha. Imagining the shining body in that sky of perception, the mind, on account of intense agitation, attains to grossness just as the bilva fruit or a kind of wood apple becomes dense by maturity.
Yes, so a wood apple gets harder and harder and harder as it matures. I don't know if there's any other fruits that do that. But the idea here, what we're talking about is how does my sense of ego and even the body come into being? So the whole idea here is the more we focus attention on something and believe in its substantiveness, the grosser it appears to me. So it is the mind itself that makes the body, mind, and intellect appear gross in the waking state. Just like in the dream state, the dream body and the dream world is nothing but imagination. This is no different. But there's another dimension to the teaching. Whatever we start to focus on, you might even say obsess on a particular idea, the more real it becomes for us. Do any of you have any friends who are conspiracy theory people?
I know somebody who kind of is.
Yeah. And they read something on the internet. Is it really true? Then they read more stuff. And of course, the algorithms are the more you look at it, you get more stuff. And then the next thing you know, I'm thinking of the fellow who marched into the pizza place in Washington, D.C. with a AK-47, and he was finally going to kill Hillary Clinton for running pedophile rings out of the basement of the pizza parlor. You all remember that story?
Yeah.
Pizzagate.
It was, pardon me?
I think it was called Pizzagate, wasn't it?
Whatever. But the point is, it became so real for him. It became so real for him. Or even the people on January 6th. These were not bad people who stormed the Capitol. They thought they were saving the country. They had a deep, firm conviction, belief that the election had been stolen from them, that the country was being taken over. And look what it impelled them to do. So for you and me, we have to be very careful, or we feed ideas, rehearse them over and over again. They become more and more real for us. So the yogi starts with the viewpoint, I cannot think a real thought, and nobody else can either. Take all of our ideas with a grain of salt, as it were. Any thoughts on this?
Sometimes belief is what you need to keep moving forward, though, right? To fight for something.
Belief is something you need in order to move forward to fight for something.
Like, for example, there's a group of people who believe Trump is bad, and therefore they have a belief that they belong to the Democratic Party and follow the values of Democratic Party.
They will do what they do based on their particular view of reality. I'd be very curious to know if Ramana Maharshi thought at all about the politics of Indian independence. He was certainly alive at the time.
I think there's a story of Mahatma Gandhi almost meeting Ramana Maharshi, but then the close aides of Mahatma Gandhi prevented that from happening because they thought that if Mahatma Gandhi met Ramana Maharshi, Mahatma Gandhi would stop doing what he did.
Oh,
Could be, could be. I don't know if that were true, but it's an interesting point. And there are people who are Republicans who are convinced that people on the left are ruining the country.
Yeah, exactly.
And for them, it's very, very real. And they too believe in what they're doing and fight for it to move forward. That's this world. That's this world. I'm not saying not to get involved in activities, but do you, first of all, believe that this is essential for ultimate reality and stuff like that? Or do you have an even deeper belief in the workings of the infinite? You know, human willpower is pretty puny, in my opinion. All you have to do is walk to the ocean shore and try to stop a wave. It's such a wonderful example of how powerful we really are. something there is that's very powerful. Ah, Dave. But we do our thing in the world, and if you're an activist and you want to work to do good in the world as you understand it, there's nothing wrong with that. In the end, it's no different than cooking. It's what you do. It's funny, I work with a whole bunch of recovering alcoholics. I have 9 sponsees right now. And some of my friends in AA said, "Oh, Jim, isn't that exhausting working with those people?" No, because I have no illusions that I can keep anybody sober. I carry the message, not the mass. I hand people tools. I don't take any of that on. If they go out and get drunk, I'm sad. I'm sorry, but I don't wring my hands. Oh, they're in God's hands. Oh my. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with jobs, I've got to have this job at this company. Right. I've got to make sure this project happens. Doesn't mean we don't work hard, but you can work hard with a light heart. Or you can put out 8, 10, 12 hours a day, most of which is worry, which is not a solution. But I think we've all had the experience of obsessing on or focusing on some problem in a relationship, and it gets all blown up. It's a big deal. You have a terrible fight. And then years later, you going fighting around. Who's had that experience?
Can I share with everybody
Please.
about looking? So, Roscoe and I finally closed the corporation after 5 years, and so I've been going through all these boxes of 30 years worth of stuff and picking things out and remembering. And what it taught me is that nothing is important because I remember, this situation, how much worry and stress and anxiety about doing it right or doing it wrong, or we were going to get in trouble. And it's like gone.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful lesson in nothing is important.
Yeah, and it's not important because in the end, it's not ultimately real.
Right. Yeah. Because now, it's all gone.
And that's
Yeah.
why the tradition uses the word lila. The divine play. It has 2 meanings. It can mean sport, like you go out and play cricket, that's lila. Or it can mean go to shotgun theater and see a play. Lila has, just like the English word play, it has both meanings. But we want to see that this particular body, mind, intellect has a role to play in the divine drama. And some of us have a leading role. Others of us have a character part. Some of us may just have a walk on it. Others of us may be supernumeraries. We don't even have any lines. But each is necessary for the drama. And all of them, when the play's over, go backstage, take off their costumes and makeup, and go home. If you're doing Lady Macbeth, you go home and there's no blood on your hands. right, next verse.
मूषास्थ द्रुतहेमापं स्फुरितं विमलाम्बरे सन्निवेशम् अथा दत्ते तत्तेजस्वस्वभावतः. Shining in the pure sky of perception with the luster of molten gold in a crucible, that effulgence through its own nature then resorts to an abode.
Yes. So we have what some teachings would call an etheric body, a sukshma sharira, a subtle body. Even in this particular lifetime, there's an ideal of your body, which is deep in your consciousness. Here's an interesting question. How do you know when you are sick? Does that not imply that there's an idea of what good health is in your mind? Think. So this is the shining body. And then because of vasanas and kleshas, defilements, selfishness, basically, being frightened, dishonest, and angry, and resentful, competitive, sad, self-pitying, we write the history on our faces. Anybody ever seen a 2-year-old that isn't beautiful? You ever seen one? But you see a 72-year-old. Someone has written on their face the story of their life, all their various samskaras. Look at that man's face. I love to look at his face. You know, he's not Ben Affleck or Leonardo DiCaprio.
He looks like a child. You know, that innocence, that openness.
But I mean, the actual physical features, you know, where they measure how wide your eyes are and the proportions and stuff like that. No, he's just a guy. But living so deep inside. It's written on his face. Look into his eyes. So it's very real with the small r that this physical body, to a large degree, is a function of our thinking. And of course, the opposite is true too. That if we live a life of deep resentment or anger or fear, we don't resolve these issues, they not only put wrinkles on our face, they can make us sick. A diseased body is frequently the result of a diseased mind, a mind that's not at ease. So you can treat your mind by doing somatic healing on the body And you can treat the body by doing mental healing work, because they're only a subtle and gross form of the same thing. So you have a rolfer.
Mhm.
So when they find a knot or something in your body, are they hurting your body, or are they releasing the pain that's already there?
It's probably a little bit of both.
More the second.
Yeah,
And do you get emotional release?
yeah,
Ah! Maybe even memories and things come back, right?
yeah. Mhm.
Because the trauma in the mind is stored in the body. They're not separate. And both work. All right, next verse.
कालेन स्फुटताम् एत्य भवत्यमलिविग्रह बुद्धिसत्त्वबलोत्साह विज्ञानैश्च यसंस्थितः स एव भगवान् ब्रह्मा सर्वलोकपितामहः. Bursting into view or becoming manifest in course of time, it becomes endowed with a stainless form. Only that form, established in intelligence, vitality, strength, energy, or ability, knowledge and sovereignty, or affluence, is the Lord Brahma, the grandsire of all the worlds.
So here is the idea of the form of God, Brahma, the creator. And I'm going to push back on the scripture. Brahma actually doesn't have a form. That doesn't mean it isn't. But people think of God as having a form, Lord Shiva, Lord Krishna, or Jesus. But even if you're a Christian, so this is for Mike. Prologue to the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and was not anything made but by the Word. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. So the word here, logos, is the cosmic Christ. But notice that it exists before the baby Jesus was born. Okay. It became flesh and dwelt among us. So this idea of God exists from the beginning of time. In our tradition, we talk about God's avatars taking a form. But the infinite is without a form. So if you're a Jew, God doesn't have a body. God doesn't have a form. In Hinduism, we tend to think of God having a form. But that's a cultural idea. But why does Vedanta posit the idea of a creator God? Ishvara, Prajapati, Brahma, goes by many names. Sometimes it's even referred to as Hiranyagarbha. Because it's a cosmos, not a chaos. The whole universe is linked. It's what Carl Jung used to call synchronicity. Everything is linked. And it's intelligent. And the quieter we become, the more we see that we live and move and have our being and deal with the cosmos. Listen carefully. And the deepest law of the cosmos is love. Not the kind of love where I want something or I want to get laid. A deeper kind of love. Love that's about complete identification. That's all I'm going to say on that for now. Next verse.
संस्मृत्य सर्ववृन्दानि समतीतान्यनेकशः लीलया कल्पयत् येष चित्रासङ्कल्पजा प्रजाः. Calling to mind all the multitudes who have passed by many times, this Brahma sportively brings about various creatures born out of his imagination.
So, what the total vasana, is another way of talking about what Brahma is. Has the potentiality of all things and all beings. Now we have to understand something about the way Brahma creates. First of all, is the word profligate, but there's a whole bunch of everything. Yeah. God is profligate. God doesn't create one grain of sand. God doesn't create one star. God's notions, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Just on this little blue speck called Gaia, planet Earth, in our 4.3 billion years, just an eye blink of time, 99.9 of all species that have ever come into being on this planet are now extinct. So yes, God creates this multitude of beings. Not only is each being finite, but entire species are finite. And in the end, what's going to happen to the sun when it starts to run out of fuel?
It'll collapse and expand.
And then what's going to happen to the earth, whatever's here? Crispy. The sun will expand beyond the orbit of the earth.
We were in one of the national parks and we had a ranger program where we were explaining what would happen when the earth is destroyed by the sun. So there's a habitable zone in our solar system that is where Earth is right in the middle, and I think Mars is at the edge. And so he says when the sun would expand, the habitable zone will also expand. And so Jupiter and Saturn will then become the habitable zone. And so there might be life in Jupiter when that happens.
Wow.
Great. God doesn't waste anything. Going on, next verse.
Tasam swargartham dharma kamartha siddhaye Anantani vichitrani shastrani samakalpayat. For the sake of attainment of heaven and final liberation, and the accomplishment of virtue, desire, and wealth by those creatures, he allotted inexhaustible and varied scriptures.
So our Vedas in Hinduism are called Shruti. What does Shruti mean? What's the root?
Shra, to hear.
To hear. Which means human beings don't figure them out rationally. They are what we would call revealed. And notice what the shloka says here. It's not only for the purpose of liberation, but the Vedas also contain how best to live a fruitful, productive, creative, happy life. Now listen carefully. Even though the Vedas are considered Shruti, they come through the minds of human beings. So, for example, there are sects of Christianity who posit that the Judeo-Christian scriptures are literally true. The earth is only 5,000 years old. Dinosaur bones are put in the ground to test our faith. All sorts of rationalizations and stuff. So they all have a cultural and a historical context, especially when we go to those sections that deal with human behavior. So, for example, in Catholicism, I love this. Since the Second Vatican Council, what is a Catholic's ultimate authority? You know, Mike?
The spirit. It wouldn't be scripture. Experience wouldn't be tradition.
A well-formed conscience.
Okay.
That's the teaching of the Second Vatican Council. So if the magisterium, the ones who write the laws for the church, say X, Y, and Z, and through your well-formed conscience, you say, that's not true for me. That's what you're told to follow. Isn't that incredible?
Wow.
That's teaching of the church. That came out of a council. That's the highest authority of teaching in the church, of the church councils.
When was that?
Between what, 64 and 68, something like
Something
that.
like that, yeah.
Mid-60s, Second Vatican Council.
So there's disagreement there. If you don't agree with something, you can.
Exactly. So there was, this was anecdotal. There was a young girl in the Chinmaya mission who, in her teenage years, really got in touch with the fact that she liked other girls. She was a lesbian. So she goes to the acharya of the particular mission center, and the brahmachari said, well, that's not according to the Dharma. That's not what the Vedas say. So you have two choices. Either become a Swamini, a sannyasi, or grin and bear it and marry some fellow and make babies. I'm not sure that's the best teaching. Antithetically, do you all know who Christopher Isherwood was? Very famous author. He happened to be a gay man, fell and a deep student of Vedanta. And he fell in love with this boy, and he goes to his Swami and he says, "What should I do?" Swami thought for a moment, went deep within, said, "See the boy as Krishna." What a different answer. One was looking at the textbook. The other was looking at Shruti. It was her. Are you catching the drift of what I'm saying?
So insight is also Shruti.
Wouldn't you say so? Did God dispense truth 3,000 years ago and then took a holiday?
All the time.
God is good all the time. All the time. But it's a well-formed conscience, not just what my reactive, indulgent mind wants to do. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
सृष्टिरेवम् इयं राम सर्गेऽस्मिन् स्थितिमागता सङ्कल्पजं जगत् पश्य सुदीर्घस्वप्नमुत्थितम्. Rama, thus this creation has come to its standing or state in this universe. See this world born out of imagination, risen like a very long dream.
Yes, so that's the sum total of the teaching. This world is a very long and very vivid dream. Now listen carefully. Your ego is not doing the dreaming. Ishvara is doing the dreaming. And in fact, your body, mind, intellect, and the ego sense in it is one of the characters in Brahma's dream. You have a bit part in the play. So, understand the being that enlivens every character, who is never touched by. I have a different image. Better than a dramatic play. It's kind of like the Muppets. And there's one puppeteer doing all the Muppets. You just can't see him. He just uses this voice for this person. Same dude. All right, going on.
संकल्पस्योपशान्तौ तत् शाम्यत् स्नेह दीपवत् अतो राघव तत्त्वज्ञो व्यवहारेषु संस्थितः नष्टं नष्टम् उपेक्षेत प्राप्तं प्राप्तम् उपारहेत्. With the cessation of imagination, that universe is extinguished just like a lamp without oil. Therefore, Raghava, Rama, let the knower of truth or reality, staying or settled in his affairs or occupation, disregard whatever has been lost and take whatever has been acquired.
Yes. So, at the end of an age, the universe runs out of juice. You could say the cyclic view of history. There's a big bang in the universe, blossom and blooms, and then there's some kind of big crunch, and then it starts all over again. But that's what happens for you and me every day. Your big bang is waking up in the morning. And you have the explosion and expression of a certain set of asanas for that day. And then when evening comes, the energy wears out. You go to sleep, you crunch. And then the next morning, and there's a sense of continuity, but it's not Groundhog Day, it's a new day. So is it with each lifetime. So is it with each experience. But the idea here is why he uses it like a dream. Something there is. The background, the substrate. Aham, I. Just watches it all. Never touched by it. It's interesting. In the chapter in the Gita where Krishna shows Arjuna his divine form, Arjuna sees Krishna with his mouth wide open and all these bodies are sticking on his teeth. He's devouring everything. Really kind of gross. And then he says, I am all devouring time. Time eats. Something there is that's outside of time, and that's you. Next verse.
Anagatanam bhoganam avancham akritritmam agatanam cha sambhoga iti pandita lakshanam. Not wishing spontaneously for enjoyments which have not arrived, and enjoyment of what have arrived. These are the marks or characteristics of the learned or the wise.
Yes. So here, the last part of the prior verse and in this verse, talking about the benefits of a stita prajna purusha, a person of steady wisdom. Here, pandita, a learned person. But it doesn't mean just book learning here. So for the person who knows through direct experience this aparoksha jnana, sthita, the steadiness, the stableness of the self, and has no false unrealistic expectations of the phenomenal world. And they find a peace. This is what the Master Jesus talked about after his resurrection. Every time he appears to the disciples, what's the first thing he says?
Be with you.
Yeah. Shalom Aleichem. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Pax vobis. And he had a peace that was not of this world. He said, my peace I give you, not as the world gives. Not about getting all the green lights of life. Last week we had the installation of the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. Did you guys get any news of that on your trip?
Have we heard about it? Yeah.
He's from Chicago.
First American Pope.
Yeah. But one of the things that was interesting that they showed videos of before his installation mass, they take him downstairs because St. Peter's Basilica, the current one, is built on the old St. Peter's, which I think was built by Constantine, wasn't it? Pretty sure. And then where it was built was the necropolis right outside Nero's, what did you call the thing? Hippodrome? Something like that. And it was built on the tomb of St. Peter. One of the things that no pope gets to forget. How did St. Peter die?
Crucified upside down.
Yeah, under the reign of Nero. There's a big fire in Rome. 70-some% of Rome burned to the ground, and Nero just blamed the Christians. So Peter and Paul were both caught up in that. Peter was going to be crucified, and he says, I don't want to be crucified the way the Master Jesus was. Turn me upside down. So even people who were chosen by God, supposedly, doesn't mean we don't have suffering. What happened to dear old Paul?
Beheaded.
Yep.
Because he was a Jew and could not be crucified.
No, he was a citizen, I think is the reason.
Correct. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, a Roman.
He was a Roman citizen. Yeah.
Thank you.
So they chopped his head off.
The kinder way to die. Right?
Very much so. Very much so. It's pretty instantaneous. But the point is, just because you're deeply touched by God, doesn't mean we don't have tribulation. But the yogi stands back. Yogi's mind is the same in heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor. Thy kingdom is not of this world. All right, next verse.
Yasya necha nava necha, yasya karmani tishtataha, na tasya lipyate prajna, padmapatram vimam bhubi. The understanding of the wise or learned man engaging himself in actions for whom there is neither desire nor unwillingness is not stained, just as a lotus leaf is not wetted by the waters.
So the idea is the lotus frequently will grow in fetid water. It's beautiful and colorful and fragrant, but below the water level, it's stanky. So the idea is so much of the world. Swamiji used to say, the mind is a sewer. He didn't say, my mind is a sewer or your mind is a sewer. He said, the mind is a sewer. But for the jnani on the surface, no particular concern or attachment. Why? Because she doesn't believe her mind. Oh, that was a stupid thought. Isn't that interesting? Ciao. Tell them what Jao means.
Go away.
It's a
How do you
wonderful
say it?
mantra.
Jiao.
Jiao.
Jao. 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 Chai. Jao.
I had a day today of just the mind was so petty. It kept just coming up with these, and I was like, "What are you doing? Stop it!" But it was just one of those days.
And, chant the name of the Lord.
Yeah. I just say Jiao now? But I was like, what again? It was weird.
Jao. Jai. Jao.
What's Jai?
Victory. All right, next verse.
Section 2. Dashura Tapaha, the austerity of Dashura. Vasishtha Ch. Bahu Prakara Sa Srishti Nasyam Tu Niyama Kvachit Jagan Maya Swarupasya Varnanavya Padeshatah Dashura Khyayikam Rama Varnyamanam Maya Shrinu. Vasishtha said, that creation is of various kinds. Indeed, there is no regularity or certainty in this anywhere. Rama, by way of information on the description of the nature of the illusory world, or as an example of the nature of the illusion constituting this universe, hear the story of Dasura, which is narrated by me.
And remember that very first thing, there is no certainty anywhere. Is that what he said?
Yeah, there is no regularity or certainty in this anywhere.
Yes. So in the beginning of our studies, I think seeing is believing. The table is real and it's there. The lamp is real and it's there. Wendy is real and she's there. God, mystery. The self, I don't know. I have some shraddha, I have some faith. I may have doubt. I don't know if this stuff is going to work. It says he gives me freedom, but maybe it's just a nihilistic teaching to rationalize horrible conditions. Everybody else seems to think cash and prizes is the answer. But we keep on keeping on. And at some point it all goes flip. And we see the self, God, is the only thing that you will ever know for certain. It's the world that's the mystery. How did our country get here? What's going to happen with global climate change? Is Yellowstone gonna be a super volcano? We're overdue. Did you guys make it to Yellowstone?
We did not know. Is that in the news now?
Pardon me?
Is that
No,
in the
well,
news now?
it erupts every 650,000 years. We're overdue.
The earthquake here too.
Was there an earthquake here?
No, I mean it's overdue, a big one.
Oh. But we never know what's going to happen in this world. Here in the phenomenal world is the great mystery. But if you know who you are, it's not fearful. The roller coaster ride. All right, next one. Let's see what Dasura. Is it Dasura or Dashura? I forget.
Dashura.
Yeah.
Dashurakyo mune putra magadheshu vane vasan mata pitri viyogena shokamagno rurodaha. The son of a sage by name Dashura, residing in a forest in the land of the Magadhas, steeped in sorrow due to the death of his mother and father, verily wept.
Yeah, so even though he's well schooled in the scriptures, his parents die and he's deep in sorrow. So it's natural. Let's see what happens.
Tam tadashvasayamasa sharira vada devata rishi putra mahapragnya kimagnya iva rodishi. Then an incorporeal forest deity consoled him thus: Son of a sage, very wise one, why do you weep like an ignorant man?
Yeah. So remember in Bhagavad Gita, Arjun's all worried about who's going to get killed in this war. And in the 11th verse, Lord Krishna starts the teaching. You grieve for whom you should not grieve. Though you speak words of wisdom, makes sense what you're saying. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Oh, that's such hard teaching. The whole rest of the book is to tell us why. Let's see what the celestial spirit says to Dashura.
Sarva daive drishi sadho sansarasya sthiti chala jayate jivyate paschat avashyam cha vinashyate. Virtuous one. The conditions of worldly existence is always fickle or transitory like this. One is born and brought up, then he perishes certainly.
So, nobody gets out alive. When I was working with a lot of AIDS patients in the 80s, I coined the phrase, having a physical body is a sexually transmitted condition and it's always fatal. You're going to die. And you're not dead today. You have to hold both. Next verse.
Evam ashvasito dhairyam alambaya kritavanasau paschatyam paitrikam karma tato brahmena karmana tapasa shotriyo bhutva drishtva shuddham dharatalam. O Ugrena tapasa vanhi aradadhum shuddhamandalam yato napnomi vrikshanam uparisthitirastu me. Thus consoled and taking courage, he performed the subsequent rite in honor of the deceased father. Then, by Vedic rites and by austerity, having become one well versed in sacred learning, and having known the world to be impure, he decided as follows: as long as I do not obtain a pure place for worshipping the fire god by severe austerity, let my residence be on top of trees.
So, a little bit of a weirdo. Kind of like St. Waldo. You all know about St. Waldo. Do you know about St. Waldo, Mike?
Do not.
St. Waldo lived in a tree. And he died in a tree. And he ended up being mummified in a tree by nature. So they made him sing. A little weird. So Dashura, of course, this is an abridgment. We're missing much of the story. He then performs the funerary rites for his parents. And after that, decides that he wants a place that's very pure to do ritual sacrifice. So he decides he's going to live on top of the tree. No accounting for taste. Going on.
Iti samprathya samprapte nipavrikshe latagrihe dridam padmasanam badva digbhya pratyahritatmana agnyat paramarthena dasha varshani agyata paramarthena dasha varshani tatra cha gavascha naramedhyadhye manase vayajat suran. Desiring thus, when he arrived at a bower surrounded by creepers, assuming Padmasana or a yogic pose of meditation, firmly on a nipa tree, with the mind withdrawn from all directions, but with the highest truth unknown, he made oblations to the demigods by his mind, or mentally through cow, horse, and human offerings for 10 years there.
Yeah, so Bower, I think, is the way we would pronounce it in Bower.
Yeah, power.
Bower in American English. A boar is a beast. So anyway, so what he does, obviously he can't do fire sacrifice with fire in a tree. He'd set his place on fire. So he does it all mentally. But he also sacrifices all these other animals. A lot of people don't realize that animal sacrifice was a big part of how Brahmins worshipped in earlier ages. Pretty gory stuff. All right, going on.
Kale namalatam yate vitate tasya chetasi valat avataranta jnanam atma prasadajam. In his mind, when it became stainless in course of time and extended or accomplished, knowledge born of mental tranquility perforce entered within.
So after years, 10 years, I think he said it was, of tapas, of doing ritual, his mind attained some purity, chitta shuddhi, and he gained some tranquility. Going on.
Section 3. Putra Prabodhanam, the awakening of the sun. Vana devati tattam cha sutam kanta mayachata. Then the forest goddess begged of him a dear or lovely son.
That's kind of out of nowhere, isn't it? I think we missed the romance that went on here. Obviously, he met the forest goddess, who was comely, probably bathing in pools, and her sari was wet and clinging to her bosom. So then they do the mufti pufti. she gets a son. Going on.
ताशूरो दयया तस्यै पुष्पं दत्त्वा व्यसर्जयत् अथ दीर्घेन कालेन तत्र सा वनदेवता द्वादश द्वादशाब्दमुपादाय सुतं मुनिमुपाययौ. Dashura, out of compassion, having given her a flower and sent her away. Then, after a long time, that forest goddess, taking with her a 12-year-old son, approached the sage there in that forest.
Now, I'm not sure if it was giving her a flower or it has a more carnal image. Say that the part of the body, whatever. Anyway, 12 years later, she comes back with a 12-year-old kid.
Kritau mayesha sarvasam kalanaamapi kovidah jnanam tvasya bhavaneva kripayopadishatvita shatviti taya prokta tada putram ahudhaivam abodhayat. She said, "This son of mine has been made proficient in all the arts by me. May your honor himself teach him, out of compassion, the supreme knowledge." Thus told by her, Dashura then taught his son in many ways.
Yes, so the son comes back, and then the father does his duty. Your first guru is your parent. So he teaches the kid. All right, going on.
Dashura uvacha sthotha nama nripa kaschit vikhyato bhavunatraye yasya nushasanam sarve shirobhi dharayanti cha. Dashura said, "There is a certain king named Swatha, literally self-arising, renowned in the three worlds, whose commands all bear on their heads, that is, all respect highly."
Okay, this is a story that's an allegory. And who this king is and what he represents is too much that we can do in just a couple minutes. So we'll repeat that verse. What verse are we on?
33.
33. And we'll deal with that next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.